Hello again, everybody. So if you haven't noticed in front of us, we are looking at the bottom half of my Delta bandsaw. Now this is a 14-inch Delta bandsaw. It's one of the good ones. It's all nice cast iron, all that good stuff. Very beefy. And we lost some bearings on the top part. But if we're going to do all the bearings on the top, we might as well do them.
Talk. Just talk.
I can talk now?
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you. Now we have permission from the little boss to talk again. Are we okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, rather than just replace the bearings on the top, we're going to hit the bearings, all the bearings. You can get a rebuild.
Have a bad rag?
What's that?
Did you have a bad rag right under that hole?
Yeah, that's where I fell through the barn.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, but talk. You can talk.
I can talk now. This might be one of the longest introductions we've ever done on this channel. So anyway, as I was saying, we have a really good old Delta bandsaw. It's all cast iron, very well made, made in the USA, all that good stuff. I think this is like a 1995 model. So the top bearing for the band wheel went bad. So we got a rebuild kit to do the entire thing. Rather than just rebuild the top, I mean, because this, get that out of the way, this spins fine. There's no play, none of that in there. We have all the, pretty much all the bearings for this thing, the works. We have the table off of it because we're going to go through, clean everything up, get everything kind of ship shape again, make it nice. So anyway, I'll show you the tools we're going to be using as we go. It's probably going to take a couple of videos because, as you guys know, you guys are getting the daily progress every night rather than just one big video on everything. I kind of feel that covers a little more information, a little bit better doing it that way. So anyway, stay tuned. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay?
Can I talk too?
Are you going to talk too?
Does this talk? This talk with this, not this, don't have to.
Okay, a few things worth mentioning as you're getting into doing this.
Doing this?
The kit you get is going to include the bearings to do the bottom and as well as the top. You're going to get a new guide bearing. You're going to get a new insert plate. You're going to get new band tires.
Band tires?
You're going to get a new locator pin.
Okay.
Now, what we're going to do here is I'm going to strip this thing right down. We might as well do it right, clean it up well, get it ready to go.
Get it ready to go.
Yeah, I have a parrot here.
I have a parrot here.
Very good. So this will be a little fun to get off of here, but that's where we're going to start.
Can you give me one?
What do you need?
I need that one.
No, you cannot have any of those.
Or this? No.
No, you can't have any of the parts for this because I know what happens when you get a hold of them. Okay?
But you know so don't hold them.
So you keep your fingers over here. Yep. You keep your fingers over here and I'll keep my fingers over here. That's too far in the fingers. What are you doing? You're crazy. Okay. Very distracted tonight, but that's okay.
Until the night.
Yeah, that's okay though. This little one, she likes the tools, likes all that stuff. You want this one?
Yeah, sure. That looks good.
Okay, you want me to put a socket on it for you?
Yeah, sure.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you can't lose them though. It's a metric one.
Okay.
Pretty easy way to start. Get everything off of here that you don't need.
Let's start this and this.
This makes it so much nicer.
And make it so nicer.
Oh boy. Well past her bedtime, but she was begging to come out here. And how can I tell that little face no when she wants to come out and spend some time with Daddy out here? The older kids, it's easy. I mean, they're not as cute as they used to be. I tell them all the time, you know, you guys are old news.
This is a video.
This is a video?
This is a video. Is this and this and this. saw my pocket.
Okay.
Can I just look? If this work? Oh, look. I can use this one. This is one.
That didn't want to come off. So first things, because this is USA made, an older one, standard Allen wrenches. Now this stuff doesn't always like to come apart without a fight.
This.
So what we're going to use is, I use this a lot at work. It's called the Ultimate Puller. And what it is a puller that can go over the hub of things like this.
I want this one.
And then you put set screws into this guy.
Up. Oh, my hand.
It's one of those things where you hope they bite into what you're working on enough to pull it off of there. This shouldn't be too bad. Even for being in the pit of despair, this thing's not in terrible shape. I mean, the obvious parts that are going to rust up like the table.
Very hot.
Very hot?
Yeah, you got to be careful. Don't put your hand in it.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No.
So make sure when you're using a puller like this, watch that set screw. You don't want to damage that. Like I said, I use these. These are really handy for getting
these and these.
blower shafts and whatnot off.
I'll fire.
Now also in the middle here, you're going to see there's a little hole drilled right there. That's where you locate something like the shaft of a puller.
It's very cold out there. I was freezing out there.
She's just over here telling us all a story.
And we just making some cookies. Can I make some cookies?
Well, sure. I'd love some cookies.
But they're very hot.
They're very hot? Okay.
You gotta be very careful. Don't put your hand in it.
Pretty self-explanatory. You want this thing as centered on here as possible. There's a tool that comes with this.
Or this one. Okay. This one. I can make sure it's not hot. But it's hot. Very hot. It's very hot.
So now we just tighten her down really well.
Very well. I just took this. It's very hot in the oven.
Kind of try to go even with it all the way around.
It's very hot in the oven. See, it's very hot in the oven. So it's hot. Let's see, make sure. Pretty cool. I gotta know some guts.
As I said, this is called the Ultimate Puller.
Alternate color.
I will throw a link to it down below in the description if I think of it post-editing. I know I'm terrible at doing that kind of thing.
Just a bit, a little bit.
But this is probably one of the handiest tools I own for doing things like this. That and a good set of gear pullers are very handy for doing jobs like this.
We got testers.
What are you doing?
In the testers.
You're crazy. Oh yes, you're nuts. What size is that, Marilyn?
It's just a little bit. It's just a lot.
You're crazy.
Yeah. It's a yellow.
Jeez.
Yeah, I love it nice. But I'm not bad boy.
You're a very good girl.
Yeah, I am.
So anyway, when you're using this puller, you have the set screws on here. If you can bottom it out against the pulley or the blower wheel, whatever it is that you're pulling with this thing, do it so that you can watch. Make sure you're not just pulling that off the gap without pulling it off of the shaft. And work it really easy. You don't have to go, it's not a race, just very slow, very controlled.
Wait for it. Hold it. I'm going to wait for it to
and it'll work extremely well.
It's not too warm, but it's also hot. Hot.
Once you get out towards the end, hold on to it because it's going to want to just flop right off of there.
Don't move my ladder.
I won't move your ladder, I promise.
I'm just walking this old thing.
There we go. So when you're dealing with these pulleys, I think I said it before in the table saw video, you want to feel down in there with your finger, feel for any grooves or striations on that pulley. If you have grooves or striations, you're going to want to replace that pulley. That means that thing's worn out. A lot of people don't realize that a pulley is a wearable, replaceable item on most manufactured things. So if that starts to go on you, make sure you replace it.
It's very hot. Don't touch it. Okay, what's that? What's this thing here on wood? So we don't stay here.
Okay, so you got retainer nuts. They're going to hold all this together. The belt cover on this makes a great way to store all the nuts and bolts on this thing.
Okay.
Okay, so I better put this away before little Miss Curiosity gets a hold of every tool I own out here. So once you have those retaining nuts and everything off, you can drive this out. Use wooden blocks, don't use metal on this stuff, because when you... Whoa, look at that! When you go to get this thing apart, and let's see if we can do this here.
It's not hot anymore.
When you go to get this apart and you go to hit that with a metal hammer, that's very mild steel. It's soft, so it has a lot of... it's not hardened steel. If you put hardened steel on stuff like this, it doesn't end up working very well. The nice part about these is they just come apart fairly easily. Famous last words, right? What are you doing? Are you being crazy?
The house.
Well, you're going to have to wait just a second. So that's all there is to getting that off. It's really not bad. It's not that hard. Make sure you leave this wheel in the right orientation for when you put it back. I don't really know if it makes much difference, but we're going to try to keep it the same. There's going to be a keyway in here that you have to get off, otherwise you're not going to get that bearing off of there. If I can get it off. Are you crazy? So you want to go back in the house with Mommy? Okay.
I taste it. So it's not very good.
What did you taste?
This.
Yeah, don't taste that. That's sawdust, you goof. So to get this bearing out, we're just going to use a piece of ash peg and our wooden mallet, our all-purpose beating stick. We're just going to very easily, very gently pop that out. You want to get this peg or whatever you're using right on the inner race. There we go. So that spacer block, keep track of that. That's going to slide right back in there when we put it all together. And then the new bearing's going to seat right against that. Now this bearing here is in decent shape. We'll save it as a spare. And if you're checking these, you want to check for shuck, anything like that. Make sure you can spin them freely. If you can't spin them freely, get rid of it. Not worth keeping. Anyway, you get your new bearings. Make sure you check them against the old ones. Make sure they're right, because with the aftermarket world being what it is, that bearing's actually, what a difference. This you can actually hear it spins freely, but you can actually hear the bearings in it. This one you can't. The new one doesn't spin quite as easily, but usually they're packed in some kind of a grease from the factory. Okay. So the old bearing on the front, there's a little retention ring on there, a little spacer. Pop that off. There's a little keyway that goes into here. You want to get that off of there. And as long as you didn't mess or ding anything up, that bearing should slide right off. Put the new one on. Just do not force it on, whatever you do. Let it kind of find its own way. And these threads are so fine on this, you got to really be careful. You absolutely don't want to bung those threads up. I think we're going to put a little never seize on them, just so we can wear it for the next week. Probably the other thing I'm going to do is clean that off, that shaft. Another thing to keep in mind when you're going through and doing this, you want to check this shaft, run your finger over it, make sure it's nice and smooth, make sure you don't have any grooves worn in, because sometimes as bearings go bad, they'll actually wear a slot right in the shaft and you have to replace it. There's no fixing it. And I tell you, really, for a 24-year-old machine, this came apart really nicely. Can't really complain about that. It's not as rusted up as I thought it was going to be in there. My helper decided to go back in the house with Mommy. My little parrot. She is a riot, though. I tell you what, that little girl is a lot of fun. And you should not have to force this on. Once you get it going, it should go. At least not on these. Some things you have to. Some things you actually have to heat the bearings up and freeze the shaft. That's how it goes on chainsaws when you're putting bearings on your crank. So don't forget that spacer washer. That's pretty important. Now, if you're like me and you ding that up a little bit, getting it apart, because that's really soft, let's take a little bit of emery cloth and clean those up. Because this needs to fit back inside that band wheel. Now don't go crazy doing that though, because if you take this thing out of tolerance, you're going to create a spot that's going to want to wear on you. And you really don't want that. A clean block of wood. And just tap it back down on. Make sure it seats all the way. This one actually has tabs. Hopefully I didn't just put it in backwards. That would be my luck. Alright, now before we go and put this back on, keep it so your never seize isn't getting, we're going to put the tire on this thing. If we can get the old one off. Now this band tire is just beat, totally beat. When they start looking like that, it is definitely time to replace them. And these are a silicone rubber. Get them as clean as you can. Of course, dust and everything sticks to these terrible. Now on your bandsaw mills, mine just has V-belts that sit in there. It's a B belt, and it sits in that pulley. Works quite nicely. You're going to notice, I don't know if you could see that, you probably can't, but that's actually crowned right there. That's what keeps your, that's what makes it so you can get that band blade on there and stay in one spot. It's kind of neat how it works. Of course, I'm getting dust all over on this thing, but it's going to have a lot of sawdust its whole life. It's kind of like stretching a big rubber band on something. Ouch. Get your fingers poked in there. And if that belt doesn't fit perfectly, or that tire, get it centered in there. Because theoretically that blade should be right in center. If you're going to use something like this to help get it there, make sure you don't nick it. Don't cut into that tire. And there you go. Alright, now we can put this back on, hope it all fits. Comes together nicely. This should just slide in there easy. You should not have to force any of this. I say you shouldn't have to force anything, but you don't want slop either. There we go. And take the other nut. Now, one thing you be careful with, you don't want to over tighten these nuts. I mean, you got to have them tight, but you don't want to He-Man them in, because what that'll do is it actually pulls on the inner race of the bearing on you, and it may mess that bearing up over time. Back to our handy dandy block of wood. There we go. Now this should churn nice and easy. Now as that's churning, sight down the line of your band wheel and make sure you don't have any wobble on the actual metal part, because that'll show you if you have a bent band wheel or not. If you have a bent band wheel, it's going to throw the machine really out of balance, so you'll have to replace it. That's not too bad. We don't have any wobble on the wheel. The tire's not, the way that band tire goes on there, it doesn't fill the entire, I kind of don't like that. But chances are though it'll wear in. I still don't like it though. So anyway, we have the bottom part sort of ready to go. We're going to do the table last because we have some other parts to do. We're not going to put the pulley on yet until we are ready to mount this to the base. So we're going to get on mounting this thing to the base, and then we're going to hit the top. The top I really have nothing to hold on to, so I want to get the top set back on. We have locator pins and all that good stuff, so we're going to get after that. Well, we're running out of time. It's getting pretty late, so we've got the bottom half of this rebuilt, kind of ready to go. Tomorrow night we're going to get the top bearings in. We'll work on getting the table nice and sanded down, nice and smooth, wax it and all that. And I want to show you guys how to properly align and adjust pulleys and motor shivs, or motor pulleys, whatever you feel like calling them. It's not rocket science, but it is a very, very important step when you're doing anything belt driven, whether it's a blower motor, doesn't matter what it is, belt driven, it is super important. It's going to save you a lot of wear on belts over time. So that's where we're at. That's what we're up to. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you on the next one.